Personal memoirs abound. Why pick up and read one memoir rather than another? Will anything we read be that one last thing that gives us ultimate understanding of the universe and the meaning of life? As Bob Dylan once sang, if there's an original thought out there, I could use it right now. Why write at all? In personal memoirs, most people are primarily concerned with themselves, often with reliving hurt. And when recording indignities they suffered, frequently from parents, there is often a "so there" aspect to the writing. It is as if the writer both wants to feel vindicated because his or her talent with words will finally pin the perpetrator down like a dead insect, and believes that somehow there are normal, middle-class families with two normal, well-adjusted parents bringing children up in a normal, well-adjusted environment. Neither of these things are true. Nobody wins out by recording bitterness at what he or she suffered as a child, and who can assume that somehow we suffered more than anyone else? I will try to avoid either of these assumptions, and childhood trauma is not the purpose of this record. It is true, however, that at the age of 60 I underwent a sea change in understanding the meaning of my life, and of any life, that may be helpful to others. Therefore, this writing is not an inward-looking account of my experience with cancer, but it is intended to help others reach a state of mind that acknowledges themselves as whole people, mind and body. By recording my post-cancer journey to wholeness, I hope to encourage my readers to find wholeness as well. To begin at the beginning, I need to write about a life-threatening condition I had let steadily build for some time, and how, unexpectedly, my life was spared when perhaps, without a loving God, it would not have been. There is much that I, like anyone, could tell about my life, but I'm placing my initial focus on one day in early December 2021. It is painful to look back at this time. I feel sometimes like I briefly saw something horrible and now want to leave it behind. But anyone seeking to be healed needs to be aware of what illness, dis-ease, is. When this beautifully intricate living thing, the body, starts to break down in different ways. On the evening of that day, my husband had decided to drive us to a self-consciously quaint, picture-perfect little town outside Milwaukee called Cedarburg. The cinema there was offering a cheap classic Christmas movie starring Ingrid Bergman and Bing Crosby called The Bells of St. Mary. I had not wanted to go. For many months I had deliberately ignored the signs that something was wrong with me, because finding a doctor in Milwaukee was too hard and expensive. Hence, I had ignored an overwhelming tiredness that had been enveloping me for some time. This fatigue was so great that I would go down to the basement and try to sit up there, but find myself laying my head on the sofa arm and letting everything become a blur. It pains me to think about this time when I respected myself so little and had rejected orthodox medicine, which, had I approached a doctor and had tests done, could surely have diagnosed the situation earlier. I also felt a strong disconnect from my environment but refused to face it. The fact that we'd moved yet again about a year ago, and the COVID environment of 2020, which alienated and harmed so many, both complicated the situation. Just as people in a deadening environment like the North or South Pole might notice their brains adding variety to the surroundings by creating hallucinations, such as the feeling someone else is walking beside them, people faced with a plethora of symptoms may create a reasonable explanation for all of them. This is what I did. Of course I felt out of sync, I reasoned, because we'd moved to another place recently. Wasn't everyone feeling out of sync because of COVID? On that day in December, though, I didn't want to go and see the movie. I cajoled myself to go. After all, it was the Christmas season, the happy time of year, a cozy time when we can let go of the ordinary stresses of life by buying material things, eating a lot of food, and seeing family. For goodness sake, I told myself, this outing entails seeing a benign movie in a somewhat chintzy little town full of shops selling Christmas ornaments. Yet nothing was simple. In the morning I had felt dizziness and fatigue, and now in the evening, green, red, and white lights seemed to loom strangely at me on the highway to Cedarburg. I also seemed to watch the movie through tunnel vision, the film characters' voices coming from far away. Perhaps it was just as well, I thought, that I would acquiesce to my daughter's recently stated demand to get my blood pressure under control. If I did not, she threatened, that I would never be able to look after the baby she was carrying. As she was a medical student, I needed to respect her opinion. "Do you even know what your blood pressure is?" she had queried on the phone. I did not, because I had thrown the machine away, thinking the numbers being so high meant that the machine didn't work. 10 months before, I had accidentally left all the blood pressure pills I still had in a hotel room. The first step to health now was facing just how horribly high my blood pressure actually was, when it was first measured in a free clinic we visited a day or two later. Then I went to the ER where my BP was measured at 258/158. Doctors and nurses were certain that I was having a heart attack. I remember the doctor's face looking over my head to a screen I couldn't see, and how it relaxed when he saw that my EKG was normal. I was given a great deal of medication to lower it at once. Later, my primary care physician also wisely prescribed spironolactone, correctly suspecting Conn's disease. But this is the interesting part of the story about this first illness from which I might have died. At first, even taking all this medication, I could not get my BP below 160/114. Then I had a spiritual experience on December 24th, which finally led to my getting control over this illness. I felt healed during the Christmas Eve service held at Milwaukee's historic Basilica of St. Josephat. One system of Conn's disease, or secondary hypoaldosteronism, is a persistent urge to pass water, but this feeling disappeared during that service, and a great sense of peace filled me. Also, light seemed to be streaming from places, such as from the Christ child in the manger carried in by the priests, and around the head of the older Polish priest as he spoke from the pulpit. When my husband and I came home, I was not able to explain this strange sense of peace that had taken hold of me. Of course, we'd seen a very moving service, especially the music, at a spectacularly beautiful church. But something else had happened as well. The next day, my BP measured 138/98. Since then, I've gradually been able to lessen the medication I take, until I now take the lower of two doses, one of them on alternate days. What this story signifies is that while modern medicine has wonderful resources to combat illness, there is a God who can affect the outcome of any illness. There is a place in every human soul where the body and the mind interact, and spiritual power from outside can miraculously affect our bodies. We do need modern medicine, the machines humanity has created to analyze and treat illness, and the drugs scientists have discovered. Doctors do tremendous work saving lives, and yet it is our personal will to live in defiance of the diseases attacking our bodies that play the biggest part in our healing. Our will to search for meaning defies the apparent meaninglessness of our diseases, as does faith in something greater than ourselves. That Christmas, for me, the meaning I found was the wonder of new life, exemplified by Jesus' birth in poverty, an innocent and vulnerable child who would sacrifice himself to share in our pain and our sins. This was part of my supernatural experience that allowed the medicine to fully work. After 6 years of high BP and low potassium caused by Conn's disease, this disease was now finally managed. I had thought that, having seen to this problem, I would not get ill again thereafter. And yet, Unknown to me, at that time I probably had breast cancer. This is a horrible thing to think of. Abnormal cells growing in and attacking people's own bodies while they just go about their business each day. When my breast cancer was discovered in February 2023, I was shocked. I'd been so ill before that I finally could not manage to walk a long distance. And as a brain scan 2 months later for another issue showed, not only had I had 5 or 6 brain bleeds, but my blood vessels were not strong. They were twisted and contorted, especially at the base of my neck, from the years when high blood pressure had ravaged my body. So, with medicine and perhaps with a little supernatural healing, I had conquered the symptoms of Crohn's disease. But I still wasn't well. In the summer of 2022, when I visited my daughter and grandchild, I suffered from hot flashes and insomnia, and during the days my fatigue returned. I was aware that something was out of sync. I cried every day, which my doctor thought was unusual. This was a symptom of my body's effort to fight the cancer by lowering estrogen. On my next annual visit to my doctor, he prescribed a routine mammogram. Like so many women, after this first mammogram, I then went through the stages of, we'd like to have another look at this. Let's do a biopsy. And then, you have breast cancer. Another biopsy showed that I had a second precancerous area in the same breast. I was afraid. It is very important for my readers and my listeners, whether they have or haven't had breast cancer, to know that one of the few silver linings to this cloud of disease is that there are others who have been through or are going through it and are there to support you. They too have suffered fear. What could be more natural in this situation than to feel fear? Cancer causes fear because it is the cause of death for so many people, and because it is not an affliction like a bad back or inflammation of the knee. It's something unseen. We are afraid of what we cannot see. Some people were terrified of the COVID virus because it could kill people and could not be seen. One can see inflammation in a knee or a rash being conquered. But cancer is different from other diseases, as unseen cells are attacking our bodies. We cannot see our adversary, and we know that it can ultimately kill us. Many of us are terrified of illness, especially cancer, because we're afraid of dying. I believe that cancer gets too much attention in contrast to other diseases, particularly debilitating neurological ones such as Parkinson's or MS. Heart disease kills more people than cancer, and yet somehow it seems less terrifying to receive a diagnosis of heart disease. This cancer-focused mindset exists throughout the population. I think this is because cancer is at the forefront of public consciousness due to the many books and articles about it. Also, it seems somehow darker, more furtive, in the way abnormal cells multiply than, for example, a stroke seems. There is indeed something underhand, undisclosed, and nastily out of control about the invading cancer. Other diseases may come with more pain, more sense of a general malaise, and more specific symptoms. But with cancer, particularly invisible breast tumors that only a mammogram can detect, there is just this sense of malevolent threat. To even describe the cancer I experienced, I need to use the words malignant and invasive, which my kind of cancer was described as being. I recoil from the threat inherent in those two words. Yet I use them because when we name something, even that act helps bring it into the light. As mentioned before, my own breast cancer was found in February 2023 as a result of a mammogram in which a doctor noticed patterns of calcification in my left breast. A small 3 millimeter malignant area was found plus another area, no size given, where the cells were merely precancerous. For countless people, being told they have cancer, including breast cancer, which is very prevalent, 1 in 8 women contract it, leaves them feeling angry. That fear and anger leads to many asking God or the universe, or whatever they believe in, why? Just as there are several stages of grief, there are with many illnesses, including cancer, various stages of reaction. The first one I experienced, as most people do, was fear. Am I going to die? Am I going to lose my breasts? If I get over it, how likely is it to come back? I don't think the fear ever really goes away, which is why there is the phrase cancer survivor. Fear, like grief, can never be denied. The fear envelops us. Finding meaning through this fear is the second phase in facing cancer. After my initial diagnosis, I went on YouTube to find some positive means by which I could fight this fear. One needs this fight because frightened people tend to shut down their body systems. They experience what Dr. Herbert Benson in Timeless Healing calls the nocebo effect, where scared people tend to suffer a great deal in body. I ran across Dr. Bernie Siegel on YouTube. He related occurrences he had written about in his book, Love, Medicine, and Miracles, where certain patients totally outlasted any gloomy prediction their doctors might make. It seems to me that these defiant patients, the ones who altered their thoughts, who understood how mindset affects the body, were the ones who healed best. They refused to be a body on a conveyor belt or numbers on tests. Instead, they were vibrant and courageous human beings. They acknowledged themselves as individuals and as children of God. For as Dr. Siegel, who's Jewish, says, in God we trust. Because who else are we going to trust in? My next chapter turns from the initial fear that accompanies a cancer diagnosis to fighting both. It does not concentrate on the all-important means conventional medicine uses, but on what tips the balance towards life in this fight with conventional medicine already on our side. What really tips the balance is acknowledging our humanity.